Salad or Dolly, threw a great party. We all drank Bacardi, it got kinda gnarly. We're light as a feather, we're tougher than leather. Together we're weirder together.
Ione Skye, weirder together. September, our birthday month.
Our birthday month.
How you feeling?
I'm good. I'm really good. I love the early September. There's some other cute early September. There's someone
Beyonce.
Well, yeah, that's
Mark Ronson.
But I mean,
them jeans.
I don't even
Jason
mean
Stewart from How Long Gone.
I'm letting go of my September 4. I just mean even.
Don't let go of it. Wring it out, baby.
Listen.
Get every drop of juice, every drop of nectar from your birthday.
I'm just saying September 5th had Lauren Lapkus, and then I can't remember. Just adorable, all these adorable people.
You got September Girls, Big Star.
Yeah, well, there you go. Yeah, we're adorable people, adorable, gorgeous guys, gorgeous girls.
Virgos are meant to be, critical, analytical, which is not always bad, but it's not the easiest sign in the world.
No.
For others.
No, particularly.
And for ourselves.
Yeah, exactly. Particularly for those that have to endure us.
That's what they say.
When I used to come to America, as well as building an indie rock career while in high school, my main obsession was buying records.
Yes.
Because people don't realize the price of vinyl and CDs that were produced in America when you're in Australia were like twice the price. So you didn't have the same sort of casual, oh, I'm going to try this, I'm going to try that. It was expensive to be a music fan.
Oh, right. Yeah. Did you get those? So yeah, how did you get, they got imports?
Yeah, they were all imported. So,
yeah.
I mean, the big stuff, like if it was on a major label, it would get made locally or in Asia or whatever. Anyway, so anytime I came, I was always just buying tons of records. And it was like if I'd vaguely heard of something or if it was on a cool label. I mean, that's how I guess that's still how people hyperlink around streaming, just finding things that are connected. And one of the things I stumbled upon when I was probably 15 years old was an artist named Azalia Snail, who was this kind of interesting, artistic, impressionistic, abstract, underground artist, experimental artist. And I loved it. Mm-hmm. And a few years later, I met Azalia, who is living in LA. And anyway, the road twists and turns, but this week, Weirder Together are releasing a new Azalia Snail single called Zap You of That Hate on Weirder Together. So how about that?
I love it.
Right?
It's great.
And today we have joining us Azalia Snail herself.
Thank you. Man, it's wonderful to be here with you guys. Yeah. I mean, of course, I've been fans of both of you, from different fields of the artistic spectrum. But I'm sure that I must have seen you in New York at some point. I can't remember every gig I went to, but I went to gigs constantly. I mean, like every night, sometimes 3 or 4 different clubs. Because not only was it super cheap, easy. But you didn't get on the guest list all the time. Like, put me on the guest list.
Hey, you had clout. That's what they call clout these days, Back then it was like, that was all about getting on the guest list to indie rock shows. Yeah.
I guess so. It's still fun to be on the guest list, right? I mean, now the concerts are like $200.
Exactly.
Anyway.
And everyone's holding phones the whole time. Yeah. But so what is, I don't know this, but I'm guessing you were not born Azalia Snail.
Why would you say that?
What's the origin story?
Well, my parents,
and when did you become Azalia Snail?
My parents had azaleas growing in the front yard in Maryland. Now, we did move around a few times. So I was born in Philadelphia, which I'm very proud of because we got Todd Rundgren.
Yeah.
Other goodies. Yeah.
And you got the word John. You know about that? That's a more current hip hop word. Jawn. It means like a thing. Like, pass me that green John over there. Okay. That's like a Philly thing. Okay. You can use anything. You can be like, you like this Weirder Together John we got made up?
John,
it's just like a word
dig
for
it.
But is it like
J-A-W-N?
John. I don't even. So that came from Philly?
That's probably.
Yeah, ongoing education. That's what we're learning these days.
I know.
Keep your minds open. Keep learning.
So Philly, and then we went to Newark, New Jersey, and so we were going into New York City all the time when it was really cool, right? I mean,
what year? Where are we now?
We're like in the late 60s.
Oh wow. Okay.
So we got to see, as a little girl, I'm wandering through Central Park, and it's just beautiful. I'll never forget it. I remember really like Times Square with the big cigarette signs and the smoke coming out.
Yeah.
There could be a guy like, the cigarette. I just remember that so well.
Yeah.
So maybe
how lucky when you look back that, but you got to live
it was
in
amazing.
New York.
My mom loved theater,
Yeah.
so she was actually an actress and did some local theater work. And then we moved to Cleveland for a couple years. Didn't really like that too much. And then we moved to Maryland outside of DC. So, but as soon as I turned 17, I'm like, I'm going back to New York. I was obsessed with New York. And I really loved Johnny Thunders and the whole Max's Kansas City thing, which was just about to end. But I used to make a fake stamp because I was like 17, 18, made the fake stamp, wandered up, saw Johnny Thunders, Suicide.
Whoa.
I got to see X-Ray Specs.
Wow.
For Christ's sake.
So this is all at Max's.
Well, that was at CBGB's.
That was CBGB. So at Max's, was Andy Warhol around?
I don't remember seeing him at Max's. And mind you, it was crazy. I was like, my mind was blown constantly.
Yeah.
So, but I did meet Andy Warhol. And in fact, he took a Polaroid of me at one of his Polaroid photographic shows. He was just like, click, click, click.
And what was your look back then? Were you...
My look? Wow. Well, I was pretty much a tomboy.
Yeah.
I loved psychedelic music, but I wasn't into my whole color thing yet. That was a little later.
Yeah.
But I definitely wore a lot of black. I mean, in New York, everybody wore black, right?
Yeah.
It's a uniform.
It was like a uniform, yeah. And the thrift stores were great then. I mean, I would get stuff for $1, like an amazing thing.
Wow.
So music was more just part of culture. It wasn't like you were determined to be a musician.
I wanted to be a musician, but here's what happened. I started hanging out with all these guys that wanted me to help them.
Right.
So I managed a band and helped them get signed. And, it was always for the man. I was just always working for my man.
Huh.
Yeah.
And I wanted to do it, but nobody thought, and, I wasn't really a trained musician. I took a little piano lessons, a little bit of guitar, but I wasn't really a real musician, but I still wanted to do it.
Yeah.
My mom wanted me to be an actress, but here's the problem with me. I can't remember my lines. I can't remember song lyrics. I can't remember, lines. I'm so amazed by people like you, Ione, and my mom to remember all those lines.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, it's definitely but as a teenager, when I started, you can remember things pretty easily, and then it just becomes a kind of, you learn how to learn, how best you learn how to do that.
Right.
But yeah, that's incredible.
I was terrible at it. I would get stage fright. So as soon as I would get on a stage, I still get it, really. What am I doing up here? What? Why am I up here?
Yeah.
I still feel that way.
Yeah. I get it.
So, but when you were seeing, Suicide and Polystyrene, weren't you already getting the concept of punk, which was that it didn't really matter if you could play an instrument, or if it was about the spirit, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
I do think so. And I definitely considered myself half hippie, half punk. I love the hippie thing. I mean, Donovan was one of my favorites.
Yeah.
So there was all these different kinds of music that influenced me. So when I started doing my own, it was just naturally a hodgepodge. It wasn't self-consciously I'm going to do this weird, mixture of a little bit punk, a little psychedelic, a little folk, a little noise. I just loved all of that stuff.
Right.
And because I wasn't a good enough musician to really play like anybody else, I just came up with my own stuff.
Yeah, I feel similarly that all I had available as far as tools was this nylon string acoustic guitar and a Sony boombox cassette recorder.
Right.
So that became my studio. And it so happened at the time when I started in the early 90s that there was a wave of home recording starting to become between Liz Phair and Elliott Smith and all that,
Absolutely.
And it is funny how these decisions you make, they're not really aesthetic decisions necessarily. They're just what's available.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But the musicians that knew how to play, not everyone was obviously classically trained, but when you say people knew how to play, a lot of people you mean were in their room with their instrument for years and years and years. Is that what you are referring to to when people
just creating my own, because I have very small hands, and so I just would make my own chords and just and do weird tunings on the guitar. And then I started collecting all these weird instruments at thrift stores like zither, and I got myself this 2 different zithers, and one I had a pickup on it and put it through all the effects, and it just made all this noise. And it's on most of my first album, Snailbait. So yeah, it was just kind of learning as you go, figuring out stuff.
But isn't that every musician?
No, because some people have lessons, or some people.
Right.
Some people also get into punk or experimental stuff later in their journey. So they start off being into Jimi Hendrix and Led Zeppelin and Black Sabbath, and they learn technically how to play with a teacher or with tablature. Or,
okay, got
you know what I mean?
That's the difference of what you're talking
they're interested in the formal elements.
Yeah, because I always, when my mind would be blown seeing these big funk bands or something, and you learn maybe they grew up and they didn't have a lot of money, and I'm always like baffled, like how did they learn how to play these instruments? Like what happened? But I guess some people obviously are born musical, and then someone teaches them, or they learn, or they play to a record. I guess a lot of things, like I drum a tiny bit and I just would play along to a record. Right. I guess some people do that, but I guess I just think, a lot of people are self-taught, right? Anyway, that's all.
Absolutely.
I'm just curious.
Have you heard of music before? It's like,
but I'm curious about being a woman and then thinking, they all know what they're doing, but a lot of them were also, the men were sitting around.
Yeah, but I think men also get an innate confidence societally, even with self-taught things.
So
that's what I'm saying. Yeah, that's my point.
Okay,
that's my point. That's my point.
Well, there was a band that I started hanging out with. He was friends with one of the guys. I'm not even going to mention his name. He was in a band that I helped manage. Got him signed, blah, blah, blah. Anyway, there was a band called Fly Ashtray, and they just thought I was so cool. They just said, who's this girl? Like, she's cool, So we started hanging out and doing all this 4-track stuff. The Tascam Porta 1. You probably ended up with
I had
that.
a 244.
Okay.
Yeah.
And so it ran on batteries as well as being plugged in. So we could take it out into the forest and get high as a kite, mushrooms, ecstasy, whatever.
Yeah.
And we would get really high and make these incredibly weird recordings. So it was very weirder together, actually. So then we formed this band called Stoink, and we called it Stoink, and we got to play at CBGB's because we did a cover of To Sir With Love by Lulu, and it was so off the wall wacky. And I sang, and I remember saying to the guys, if Lulu heard this version, she would turn over, and I couldn't say she would turn over in her grave because she was still alive. So I said she'd turn over in her new kitchen, blame it on drugs. So if you put those initials together, STOINK, and just for kicks, we put an exclamation point between each letter.
In the new kitchen. Turnover in the new kitchen.
So we played CBGB's. It was fantastically fun and crazy.
And did you feel like, as you were coming in and starting to play clubs and everything, did you feel like an outsider, or did you feel like part of the scene?
I never felt like part of any scene. And in fact, I wrote a song once called Scenescape about trying to fit into a scene. I never fit it, even with like the Riot Girls, the lo-fi people. I just didn't feel like I fit in. I still really don't feel like that, but it's okay. You got to do your own thing. But I definitely wasn't good at fitting in, and always felt a little bit of a misanthrope.
Did you want to fit in? Like, did you long to be accepted?
That's a good question. Wow. I was kind of a proud misanthrope for a while.
I mean, maybe I'm thinking maybe that's just an idea of fitting in is sort of maybe a need to feel enmeshed, or maybe the instinct to just feel like you didn't fit in is you just sort of own your own experience. And that's actually the way that we all kind of are, but we so don't want to because it might feel lonely, that you just feel like you have to kind of enmesh with certain groups of friends and certain scenes. And so I kind of think like, it's not so much that there's something like wrong necessarily. It's kind of your natural way to be. I mean, not you, but one, I think most people, you know, as long as you know to connect and love and, I don't know, but who knows? It's interesting. I see that with my older daughter, that she's sort of giving herself a hard time because people love her and she loves hanging and she loves scenes, but she's sort of like, I feel like I should be like finding my people in and I kind of think like, I think she's just sort of aware of her.
Yeah, but do you think creatively, Like, I do think people rise together, and you need allies to, whether it's bands you want to play shows with that you can create a vibe together with, or be on a label where you resonate. Like, there is, I think there's both. There are those artists that are totally misanthropic, and then there's like Elephant Six, like which we all saw last week, which they really benefited from finding like minds. So there's kind of both.
They did. And it's funny because I met them very early on, and I never even thought to ask them, hey, will you put out my records? Yeah. I got lucky because I toured all the time. I mean, I was on tour 3-4 times a year in the 90s. It was so easy then, right? I mean, the gas was cheap. Everything was easy.
And you did the whole the network of crashing on people's couches and that whole
I did do a lot
indie
of
rock
that. Or
touring.
finding the cheapest funny little motels and but just finding like-minded people all over the country and Europe. I went to Europe a lot. I was living in New York, so it was this easy trip. Yeah. And every time, I would do these things and I would meet a lot. And I'm still friends with, I see a little zither there. Or no, a thumb piano. There's a kalimba. Sorry, got distracted. But I get into these modes where I meet a lot of cool people, and then I feel like, let's put together these shows and let's do this, like the Elephant Six. But then recently I found out that Robert Schneider was a big fan. Who knew? So I said, I should have asked Robert then to put out my stuff.
I know.
That was an amazing. He sent an incredible, lovely quote about the release of the new single, just really paying tribute to what an influence you were under everything they were creating.
Isn't that great?
It was kind of like, what? It kind of made me cry a little. It's just like, because you don't know when people are kind of seeing what you're doing, but maybe they don't say anything. Maybe they don't want to admit that they like somebody like me, because my stuff is so weird. And I don't mean it to be weird. It's just, that's what comes out.
Yeah. And back then it wasn't like, taking so many pictures, and there were the photographers in the scene recording, taking pictures, but that was sort of their art form. And then there wasn't, and it's supposed to, also when you're young, you're not like, as you get older, when it's sometimes too late, I mean, look, we're all luckily working and everything still, which is great. Yeah. But then you start to think, hey, I love your work, I love you. But when you're all young and kind of spacey, you're not like focused enough.
Often when it takes for someone to die before everyone comes out and goes, I was so influenced by that person. And you just want to say, tell them while they're here.
Right. Yeah. Well, that's what I think that people should be more aware of. Celebrate the people that, while they're still here, instead of waiting till they go. That's why I love the idea of life. What is that? People are doing this now, like celebrations while they're still alive.
Oh yeah. Why not? Like Albert Brooks on Curb Your Enthusiasm. He threw his funeral while he was living, and Larry David deeply resented it.
That is so great. That is so great. So what I was going to say is, when I saw that you guys formed this, I guess about 4 or 5 months ago or something like that, Weirder Together, I was like, God, I got to be on Weirder Together. This is so up my alley.
Yeah, natural.
And I'm just so happy that you're getting a little more political. Not to get too political on the show,
it's okay.
But one of the last times we saw you, because before the COVID thing, we did a show at this really funny little castle-like house. And Dan and I, there's Dan West over there, we had this song for Bernie Sanders called Bernie's Air, and we did it. And I was like, God, Ben, we really got to get Bernie Sanders in there. And I remember you saying something like, and this isn't a bad thing, you said, well, I'm still kind of working on my own self and trying to figure out my own life. I can't really think about, and then things got really bad.
About influencing people. I vacillate. I still vacillate. Really? I get in a real, sometimes there's a real activist energy that comes in. Like in Australia right now, there's a massive referendum happening about recognizing the Indigenous people within the Constitution. So altering the Constitution. Yeah. Imagine if they, when they try and do that kind of thing here. It's like but
which is, it's so insulting to even have, you know what I mean?
We shouldn't need to have a referendum about it. It should just be, but so that is lighting me up a bit. But I'm also aware that it's tricky for artists because these issues, these moments, these candidates, they come and go.
Yeah.
They pass through, and the work we make and the messages we make, they do have to have a sense of eternity in them. And it's a balance I think we each have to wrestle with all constantly.
But this has one other thing good about being a really, truly underground artist. You can say whatever the hell you want.
Yeah.
And they're like, whatever. What does that person's opinion matter? But I mean, the idea, and the Beatles knew this, is really to spread the love. And to just go back to that part where I said I was a proud misanthrope. I'm not proud of that now. But I was just, my dad left when I was 13. I felt really like that was my fault. And I just started feeling so bad about the world. And I hated corporate BS. Are we allowed to swear on this show?
Yeah.
Bullshit of the corporate bullshit, right?
Yeah.
I hated it. So I would do all these temp jobs in New York and just go in there, and they would just treat me like a speck of dirt, in these big, huge offices. But I did get to work for Walter Cronkite once.
Oh, wow.
2 days with Walter Cronkite, yeah. Anyway.
What was that like?
It was amazing. I mean, he was great. And in fact, he said, just throw this away, and I'd put it in the can, and then I would dig it out. So I have a couple of Walter Cronkite
That's
things
really cool.
So, yeah, but, but now I realize really, and it really helped to meet somebody like Dan West, because he's such a lovable person. And so when I first met Dan, I wrote a song for him called Lovey Dove. And he was so full of love and light. And I thought, wow, somebody can actually be like this in the world. And, I had moved to California in late 99, and that changed everything for me. Because I kind of wanted to be bi-coastal. I still had my New York, tug. But New York just was getting so gentrified, and all my favorite cafes, I was living in the West Village, they were all closing down. Now it's all designer boutiques. Where is your local, deli and your little cafes and your,
It's just the White Tavern, or there's nothing from the
the
old
White Horse Tavern's still there, right?
But,
yeah.
What else? Yeah, that was my first big New York where I lived.
Oh, cool.
'Cause my mom was from the Bronx and Brooklyn.
Oh, yeah.
But but the West Village. But it used to be a lot of characters.
It was so bohemian.
Yeah.
And then I remember when I found Echo Park, I thought, this is still bohemian. And then, of course, that started getting gentrified. Yeah. But I
want to ask you about that process of commercialization and gentrification, because one of the things that I think people who are just young people who are online now are fascinated with is, it seems like from the questions we get, is that shift that happened early 90s with Nirvana, where underground culture, suddenly the eyes were on it and people were seeing dollar signs.
Yeah.
And I'm curious, even though I know you never went overtly commercial or anything like that, did you feel the impact of that shift in the industry at all?
Yeah, I mean, it just seemed like our little underground world was all of a sudden being highly dissected by the corporate elite. And, how can we make our money? And I remember even me in 1993 released an album called Burnt Sienna, and TVT Records came out. And CMJ gave it a really nice review. Remember the College Music Journal,
sure.
right? And so a few labels came up to me, they would come find me somehow. And I remember a meeting with TVT, and that guy, the way he made money was TV themes. That's why it was called TVT Records. They signed 9 Inch Nails and made a ton of money with them. And the guy brought me into his office. What was his name? Oh my God, Tom Sarag, I think was his name. I'm not sure. So he brings me into his office, little old me, and he's like, well, Azalia, what do you want to do? What do you want to do with your career? And I thought to myself, should I say I want to take over the world the way Madonna did it?
Uh-huh.
But no, I didn't want to do that. I just said, well, I just want to be able to keep creating my art. And of course, that's not the right thing to say to a big label. You have to say, I want to be a star.
All right.
But I didn't really want to be a star, and especially because you see the stories, anybody from Marilyn Monroe to Judy Garland, they're the stars, and then it becomes horrible.
Yeah, it doesn't end well generally.
Right?
Yeah.
Kurt Cobain, who I didn't really know him, but of course all my friends knew him. And I remember he was playing a club called, it was in Times Square in some penthouse, and I was supposed to go. My boyfriend at the time, Charlie, was opening for him. It was one of those nights I just didn't feel like going out. So I never did get to see Nirvana. Yeah. But I just thought, it's not always healthy to become so big, and then all of a sudden every little thing you do, they're analyzing and dissecting and criticizing. I never liked being criticized. I didn't even like walking down the street in New York wearing a slightly revealing outfit, because all the guys, I hated that catcalling, right? Did
I'm
you
the
ever
same.
like that?
No, I'm fascinated like when people do wear clothes like that. And even I notice like when I dance more like a man a little bit, like in the club or something.
Yeah.
Like I don't dance, like I'm afraid of that attention, that sexual kind of attention publicly.
Yeah.
Like just because it feels like it could go, I don't know. I've never liked that either.
So you had to put yourself out as an actress, though. And how were there times in movies where they said, "Oh, will you wear?"
Oh no, love scenes I didn't have a problem with if I liked the project.
Okay.
It's interesting because when being an artist and not like I paint. But the idea of having a fancy art show, like I think of Basquiat, like somebody who all of a sudden when there's this whole industry coming at you, you have to do a series, you have to do a show. And the artists that can pull that together and even the Elephant Six thing when you're in a house and making music versus all that outside pressure.
Right.
That sounds really hard. How do you stay creative in that kind of environment? But doing a movie, it's weirdly like it's so organized that you just know I have to come in, do this scene, I have to be like this in this scene, and it's
even with the grips and like the grips and the electric guys.
I can be creative under those circumstances.
That's good,
but I feel
that's brave for me. That's
it's
very
brave. But anytime I've had a commission as a painter, Ben.
Yeah.
The difference
You flip out.
The difference between I'm painting this because I feel like it versus doing a portrait of people's children, or can you do a landscape for me? Then I'm
the pressure.
agonizing. Yeah. Pressure.
Yeah.
So, but it's like hard, I think, for people to create with all of that pressure, I guess.
Oh yeah. Could you imagine, like I said to Dan earlier, just constantly people expecting you to do all these things that you're not comfortable with. Like even today, because I was a little nervous about today, why not? And I said, can you imagine if I had to do an interview like this, like 5 to 10 times a month or whatever, or 30 days in a row?
You'd get relaxed about it though.
I don't know.
No?
I don't know. It depends on who you're talking to.
Yeah.
Like you guys are cool. I feel like you're one of me. We're all kind of weirder together. Yeah. But if you're with some, I did do some interviews with people that didn't really know who I was. And they're just asking like these very mundane questions. And you're like, okay. Imagine like Kurt, he didn't really like to be asked those kind of questions where people didn't really get him.
Yeah.
Right? I guess.
Yeah, you have to. Yeah, a good interviewer, I guess, is someone, you read the vibe of the person, I guess.
So do you feel in some ways that you actively capped the types of success or experiences that you exposed yourself to did you know what I mean? That's the classic like experimental artist thing, like not wanting it to go too far.
I don't know. I think I would have liked maybe 1 or 2 notches up on the top.
We all would.
Just to be able to make a better living, because it's been a bit of, it's been a struggle. I ended up getting into the film world and being a costume designer a little bit and stuff like that. I also have like scripts and like everybody else in this town and different projects, but it would be nice, to get like I think the Elephant Six movie, I'm like, this is so great for these people that, yes, they had a certain amount of notoriety, but just some of those guys like John Fernandez is still working in a record store, which is fine. Yeah. But I think he's just like posting now constantly on Facebook, here I am, look at me in the movie and how cool is this?
They're so excited and it's
they're
nice.
They're so excited. And I love that it happened in a very organic way.
Yeah, because they didn't do it for fame. And to be getting a little bit of fame and notoriety at the moment, it's like it feels appropriate. It's like the
number one movie on Apple or whatever,
Yeah, so
which is kind of crazy. And the music is so great. Neutral Milk Hotel, Apples in Stereo. Yeah. I watched your podcast about them. And, it was really sweet. And like I said, Jeff, here's a good example. The guy from Neutral Milk Hotel, Jeff Mangum, he never wanted that kind of attention because he's so sensitive. He's such a sweet, shy person. And that's why he kind of couldn't keep doing it. It's really hard, I always think like people that are the sons and daughters of major celebrities, like it must be so weird. And like, where do they go? Well, they could go to a remote island maybe and live. But, it's hard when you don't choose fame. And then it's hard if you just want to do your art and you become super famous and then you can't handle it. Right? I mean,
what do you feel looking back on kind of this amazing varied career where you have done lots of things, but you've done them each with your personal touch? Like, what are you most proud of when you think of your whole catalog of creativity that you've created so far?
That's a really good question. I mean, I think because I did it my way, I never compromised. And even when I had to work on some movies where they're like, I'm like, I can't do it that way, But yeah, I mean, I think, like I said, the collage of all the different things that influenced me, I'm proud that I did my own thing. And I didn't bow down to pressure to try to be like somebody else. And I'm also kind of proud that I didn't go for the totally sexualized thing. Like maybe not just because I wasn't comfortable with it, but I thought it was a little cheesy. Like, as you get older, you may not be as hot, or you may not have the same body or whatever, And I just really wanted to be known for what's up here in this head. And, not that it's a bad thing to be called attractive, but I just didn't feel comfortable with that.
So let's talk about the new stuff, the new music. So we connected a couple months back and about the podcast, and I was like, wow, I also want to put out an Azalia. Oh, wait, I have a question for you before that. How do you feel about about Azalia Banks, about Iggy Azalea? You had the total, you owned that. And now you got these other upstarts.
I know.
What does that do?
Well, I said, first I think it was, I don't know if it was Iggy Azalea first, but Azalia Banks, I still believe that her mom saw my name in the Village Voice and just said, I'll put in an extra E. But yes, Azalia, because nobody used that name, right? And then Iggy Azalea, Iggy Azalea. Iggy Pop must be pissed, right? And there was only one Iggy Pop, and there was maybe only one Azalia. I don't know. But now Iggy Azalea took both of us.
Isn't it funny that like 300 years from now, when someone's Googling, there may be some confusion about who was Iggy Pop and who was Iggy Azalea. You know what I mean?
Man, right?
Well, I heard that's why McCartney wanted to flip the songwriting credit for Yesterday and for some of his big songs to be McCartney Lennon.
Oh, that's interesting.
Because he said, look, 500 years from now, someone's going to open that up and just go, oh, yeah, the main guy that wrote it is Lennon.
That's really interesting.
So, it's who cares? We're all going to be forgotten, but,
whatever. The world might just be owned by little insects in 50, 100 years.
Okay, so now we're moving on to this current music. I was like, I want to put out an Azalia Snail record. And you were like, I've got some. So tell us about Zap You of That Hate.
Yes. But what's so crazy is we bumped into this guy, Adam Lazis, in the last year or so. And he's this really sweet guy. He did a bunch of indie bands in the 90s. He had several studios that did very well. And now he's living in LA. We all end up here for some reason. I don't know. But we just kept, and he said, hey, if you ever want to come, use my studio. And Dan and I were like, God, we wish, but, we don't have like $100 an hour or whatever it costs. And so he said one day, he goes, why don't you just come over? Don't worry, let's just have some fun. So during COVID, I was just constantly making music in voice memo recordings with my various omnichords. I have about 3 or 4 models. And by the way, those are becoming really popular, but I was the first. Don't tell anybody. But I had them since 99. I was it took over from the guitar because I can do so much more with them. And I love the sonic spaciousness of the omnichord. It's so me. It's like I am a space rocker, really, above all the other things we mentioned. But so I went over with the songs and started recording them. And then when you said, do you have anything? I'm like, boy, do I have. I have like 50 new things that I've been working on. And I wanted to do something to spread the love and also as a comment on hateful people, because I swear to you, I don't understand that unbelievable amount of hate that some of these people have, the GOP, and others. But so I thought, zap you of that hate. If only I could just take like a magic wand, zap you of that hate. And then I had this thing where I'm going, dun, 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 dun. This is how the song goes.
I love that song.
Thank you.
Okay.
And so I just wish that I could go, dun, 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 and just zap all of the evil, horrible people from the world. I mean, what if we could do that?
Yeah.
That should be a movie.
Yeah.
Right? They all just get zapped away. And then what would we be left with love? And then maybe we wouldn't know what love is as much. Because if you didn't have hate, would you have love? I don't know. It just seems so much easier to love, doesn't it?
Yeah.
It's so much easier.
Better thing to aspire towards.
I think so. So that's what that's all about. And then I figured I did a version with a bunch of words that I wrote with Adam. And I listened to him like, I don't even need to say anything. It's gang, 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 gang.
I know. I love that the song has like a message to it, but it's essentially an instrumental.
Yeah.
Like, because that reminds me of some of sort of like the cosmic jazz and stuff like that, where it was emitting a vibration.
Right.
And it'd be like, this song is about, peace and enlightenment. You're like, well, it sounds like a saxophone solo to me.
Right.
But yeah, it's super
it's like
cool.
John Coltrane or
Yeah.
Ornette Coleman, who, we have a project, a free jazz thing.
Wait, let's get
anyway.
Danny.
Let's
Dan,
bring in
there's so much
Dan
talk
West,
of Dan,
my
and we
God.
haven't.
Yeah.
Let's
come
bring in
on
Mr.
down.
West.
Yeah, come on in, slide that microphone over.
I can move that bag or whatever.
Yeah, come on in, make sure
I
we can
have
see
to
you on
tell
the
you,
camera.
this
Yeah,
has
we
been
can.
so
Come on
fun.
in.
Yes.
Yeah.
You're much higher up. You have a lot of authority in this
Ooh,
situation.
wow.
Oh boy, here we go. Well, hello. Hi, everybody.
The man of
Yes.
What were we going to say? You
Pleasure
said
to
it's
be
been
here.
fun.
Oh no, it's great to. You guys are asking some of the best questions. I'm not just saying this because now I'm sitting here, but no, this is really great. I mean, this is just. I'm learning a lot about you through some really interesting questions, and it's enlightening.
And you guys have multiple projects together, as well as the project of life that you work on together as a couple.
Yes.
Right. Yes. Well, I started to tell a story. I wrote a song for him called
yeah.
Lovey Dove.
Sorry,
and then,
it's squeaky. That's
Yeah,
I forgot all about it. I
Find
forgot
a
all about
position,
it.
stick to
Can
it.
it go down? Or?
It's not worth messing with
It's
that.
not worth messing with.
he's
It's fine.
going to be the really tall guy here.
Yeah.
So we started playing together. First, I started playing on his songs. He started playing on mine. And we were like, let's make a band.
Well, one of the things that we've always said, and we were talking about this morning, is she was doing her thing on the East Coast while I was doing my thing on the West Coast. I was in the Paisley Underground. I don't want it. This is about you, but just a quick backstory. Obsessed. My parents had tons of cassette players. I recorded. So I grew up recording myself as I was learning and did the sound on sound recordings. Then I got a 244 like you had. Then I got a 246, which was the Cadillac. And I had a band called Through the Looking Glass, and Rodney played us all the time. And then
Rodney on the Rock.
long story short, I saw everything took off so quickly. To your thing about fame and things happening, half the people I knew who were playing music suddenly were getting into hard drugs. I didn't like that direction. I was always a very positive kid. My parents were very supportive. My dad was a television writer. He just passed March 4th of this year, James Douglas West. Anyway, I ended up going to school, and I had learned to read music very young. So you could throw a piece of music in front of me and I could sit there, But I didn't really develop it. I became sort of like you guys, a creative, doing psychedelic music and everything. Then I got into jazz, and I started studying with a guitarist named Ted Green. Mind blower. Anyway, yada, yada, yada. Bands, projects, I could go on. But Zay, I call her Zay, when she met me, it was just, we clicked, and that's a whole story. I don't know, do we want to talk about how we met?
How we met? Oh, well, we had met in the early 2000s, and then we reconnected on actually a love website. Which one?
OkCupid.
OkCupid.
Aw.
Is that weird?
I love
Sweet.
that.
We're studying. Hey, feel free. Okay, Cupid. We welcome your big bucks.
Yeah, you should sponsor
Yeah.
the show. It'd be perfect.
And it was so cool because I remember seeing her handle was Roxy Music Lover. And I said, where in this sea of people that I just don't get, here's somebody, it just blew my mind. And we had some back and forth before I found out it was Azalia. And I said, oh my God, Azalia, is this Azalia Snail? Because I met you 10 years ago. And the rest is history. And she was always so great about my solo music because I was always a band guy and I was always very self-conscious to be on my own, even though I had this huge trunk of stuff that didn't make the bands, but was. And so she went through and she put together my first solo album, which was like, wow,
really great.
Azalia
Hot Corners.
Snail. Oh my God, thank you. And it was very cool. And so I have produced some solo music of hers. She's played on my stuff. We're Lovey Dove. I'm playing on her new song. I play bass and
Yeah, the fuzzy bass.
and
on
the fuzzy
Zappy
bass on
Overhead.
Zap. and some other things on this new record too.
Yeah.
So it's very
And then
exciting.
Robert Schneider put out a song of another new song, Trek Light, and you're on it too.
with
Electric
piano
Kangaroo.
and
Cool.
and I have an instrumental that I recorded with a guy named Matt Thorne, who worked with the Dust Brothers a little bit in the 90s. And so Robert was so excited. He's the most positive guy. What did you
Yeah.
say
So
about
sweet.
if we could have a pocket Robert
Oh yeah, I
Schneider?
want to carry a pocket Robert, a mini
I like
Robert.
a pocket Robert. That sounds good. That's like a
Pocket
cute
Robert.
product.
Pocket
because
Robert
he's
in my
such a like he
He's-
is that person in the film.
Yeah.
He's so
Yeah.
joyous and so positive. Let's all get together and make something.
Yeah.
Yeah, he really
It's
is
such a
one of the
great-
most incredible human beings.
Amazing.
Such a sweetheart. You'll have to have him on sometime.
Yeah, would love
Oh,
to.
yeah.
Well, the single is out now. It's called
Yeah.
Zap You of That Hate. It's on Weirder Together. It's available to stream everywhere, and it's a gorgeous piece of kind of space rock.
Yeah,
Let's
it
call it
really
space
is
rock.
kinda
You
like
said
space
it, right?
rock.
Space rocker.
Yeah. Yeah.
Thank you guys so much for joining us.
Thanks for having us.
Do you, our audience are the beautiful babies. Would you like to? We'd like to leave with. We'll go into the song, but maybe before that, you could bid farewell to the beautiful babies.
Farewell to the beautiful babies.
Farewell
Who
to
are
the beautiful babies.
That's our audience.
Oh, the beautiful babies.
farewell to
You gotta
beautiful
name 'em.
babies.
Oh, that's
Yeah.
That's a
sweet.
thing, you know,
Beautiful
people name
babies.
Podcast law. You got to name your
they
audience.
name their
Oh wow!
All right. Well, beautiful
Thank
babies.
you, beautiful babies.
This is Azalia Snail with Zap You of That Hate.
Thank you.
Together we're weirder together.